Some mornings you wake up already tired, not from work, but from waiting. Waiting for a change, waiting for a sign, waiting for God to finally move. You see others rising, marrying, winning, healing, while you stay in the same place, same pain, same prayers. You smile outside, but inside you're screaming, God, what about me? You're not faithless. You're just exhausted from hoping. You prayed hard, you stayed patient, you trusted, and still, nothing. And the hardest part is not the pain, it's the silence. Because waiting without answers feels like being forgotten. Daniel had always been the kind of person who planned everything. Every detail, every step, every goal. Yet somehow, life had a way of teaching him patience the hard way. This waiting season wasn't just a pause. It felt like the world had pressed pause on him, and he was left staring at the ceiling, wondering if God had forgotten him. He spent his mornings in quiet reflection, coffee in hand, sitting by the window as soft sunlight spilled into his room. The streets outside were empty, but in his heart, a storm was raging. He asked himself over and over, am I doing something wrong? Did I miss a step? Every prayer felt heavy, each word swallowed by silence. Friends called, checking in on him, sharing their wins and milestones. Daniel smiled, congratulated them. Yet every celebration reminded him of where he wasn't. It was not jealousy. It was the quiet grief of being in a season where doors seemed locked, opportunities delayed, and promises postponed. Evenings were the hardest. Daniel would walk alone on empty streets, the cool breeze brushing past, the sun casting long shadows across buildings. Some nights he sat on his rooftop, staring at the sky painted with fading pink and gold, letting the quiet remind him that he wasn't truly alone. He began noticing small things, the way the light fell on the sidewalk, the gentle rustle of leaves, the rhythm of his own heartbeat, and realized maybe God was teaching him to notice, to feel, to be present in quiet moments that often passed unnoticed. In this waiting, Daniel learned that life wasn't always about the destination. Sometimes, the lessons were in the pauses, in the silence, in the moments where nothing seemed to happen. God was shaping him, molding him, preparing him for something greater. The waiting wasn't a punishment. It was a preparation, a season of growth unseen by the human eye. As days turned into weeks, Daniel began to notice a subtle shift inside him. The waiting season, that had once felt heavy and endless, started to reveal its quiet lessons. He realized that in the stillness, he was learning patience in ways he had never experienced before. Every unanswered prayer, every closed door, every postponed opportunity was shaping him, not breaking him. One afternoon, he found himself sitting on a park bench, the sun dipping low, painting the sky in warm oranges and soft purples. Children laughed in the distance, dogs ran freely, and people hurried past without a thought for him. And yet, for the first time in months, Daniel felt a strange calm. He let himself breathe deeply, absorbing the life around him without comparing it to his own. He began to see that waiting wasn't about being stuck. It was about preparation. In these moments of stillness, God was teaching him humility, self-reflection, and trust. Daniel remembered the countless times he had tried to control outcomes, pushing, planning, and forcing life's timeline. Now, in the patience of waiting, he was learning surrender, the kind of surrender that brings peace even in uncertainty. One evening, he walked along an empty street under the soft glow of streetlights, the city quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. He felt the weight of loneliness, yes, but also a strange reassurance. The world could move forward around him, yet he was not missing out. He was being shaped in ways that no one else could see, learning resilience, understanding, and the gentle art of trusting God's timing. Daniel also discovered gratitude in the small things, a warm cup of coffee in the morning, the way sunlight touched the walls of his room, a simple message from a friend. Each small moment became a reminder that God was present, even when his answers were delayed. At night, he often sat by his bedroom window, staring at the stars, realizing that waiting was not absence. It was a preparation, a silent molding of character and faith, an invisible training ground for the life that lay ahead. In this season, Daniel began to understand that life's most profound lessons often come not in moments of triumph, but in moments of patient waiting. Weeks turned into months, and Daniel began noticing subtle changes in himself. The impatience that had once gnawed at his heart was softening. He wasn't moving faster, but he was growing deeper, learning lessons that only a waiting season could teach. Every quiet morning, every empty street, every unanswered prayer was carving patience, humility, and faith into his spirit. One late afternoon, he found himself on the rooftop again, the city stretching endlessly around him. The sky was a canvas of soft gold and pink, and a gentle breeze lifted the edges of his hoodie. He breathed in the calm, letting the stillness remind him that life didn't have to rush. Even in waiting, he was alive. Daniel began journaling, pouring his thoughts onto paper. Hopes, fears, questions, and prayers. Writing didn't make answers appear, but it helped him see the growth happening inside. He noticed his heart becoming more compassionate, his mind more patient, and his faith more quiet yet strong. Each word he wrote was a small step in understanding that waiting was not wasted time. It was a shaping process. One evening, he walked along a quiet park path, the last rays of sun glinting through the trees. He paused to watch a single leaf fall, spinning slowly before landing on the ground. In that simple moment, Daniel felt a profound peace. He realized God's timing wasn't about rushing the story. It was about letting each moment teach something meaningful. He also began noticing the people around him more deeply. Their struggles, their small joys, their quiet victories. He understood that life wasn't just about reaching milestones. It was about presence, empathy, and love. Waiting had opened his eyes to the depth of living in the moment. Some nights, Daniel would sit by his window, listening to the gentle hum of the city below. He realized that even when nothing seemed to happen, God was still at work, teaching him trust, resilience, and hope. Daniel understood now that waiting wasn't a pause to endure. It was a space to grow, reflect, and prepare for the life God had carefully planned. By now, Daniel had begun to embrace the waiting. What once felt like a burden now felt like a gentle teacher, showing him truths he couldn't have learned any other way. He started noticing the quiet beauty in everyday life. The soft morning light spilling across his desk, the rhythm of birds outside his window, the way shadows shifted with the sun. These small moments became reminders that God was present, even when the big answers hadn't come yet. On weekends, he would take long walks through quiet streets, letting his mind wander without rushing. He noticed details he had always overlooked: the texture of brick walls, the pattern of leaves falling, the distant sound of laughter. In these moments, he felt a deep connection to life and to God. Patience was no longer just a word. It had become a living part of him, quietly strengthening his heart. He also discovered a new kind of courage. Daniel realized that waiting didn't mean staying stagnant. It meant learning to move within stillness. He began taking small steps toward growth, reading, reflecting, helping others, and investing in his personal goals. Each action, though small, felt significant because it was done with patience and trust, not desperation. Some evenings, Daniel would sit on his rooftop, the city lights flickering below, and the sky painted with deep blues and purples. He would watch the stars and quietly thank God for shaping him in ways he could not yet see. Waiting was no longer an enemy. It had become a companion, molding his character and deepening his faith. Daniel began to understand that life's timing is rarely ours to command. Every pause, every delay, and every moment of silence was a thread in the tapestry of his growth. Waiting was not wasted. It was preparation, quiet but powerful, shaping him for the future God had planned. By this point, Daniel had learned that waiting was not emptiness. It was a preparation, a shaping of the heart that only silence and patience could provide. He began to see that God's timing was never random. Every delay, every unanswered question, and every quiet moment had a purpose. The lessons of humility, trust, and resilience were being etched into his character, preparing him for the future he could not yet see. Some mornings, Daniel would simply breathe in the silence, listening to the subtle sounds of life. The distant hum of traffic, the rustle of leaves, the occasional bird. In these small moments, he felt God's presence, gentle and sure. Waiting no longer felt heavy. It felt sacred, a chance to grow in ways he hadn't anticipated. He began to trust that life was not about rushing to milestones, but about embracing the journey. Each step, each pause, and even each setback became a teacher, guiding him to a deeper understanding of himself and of God's plan. Daniel realized that faith is not only found in answers, it is found in the trust that grows when answers are delayed. Evenings were now a time of quiet gratitude. Sitting on his rooftop, watching the sun sink behind distant buildings, he whispered prayers of thanks, not just for what he had, but for the lessons waiting had given him. Patience, resilience, hope, and faith were no longer abstract concepts. They were alive inside him, shaping the man he was becoming. Finally, Daniel understood that waiting is not a punishment, nor is it wasted time. It is a sacred space where hearts are formed, trust is deepened, and faith is strengthened. God's timing is perfect, and even in silence, He is working. So if you're in a season of waiting, remember this: you're not forgotten. Your prayers are heard. Your growth is happening. Trust the process, embrace the quiet, and know that God is preparing something beautiful just for you.